Hello, I'm Hannah, and this is Hannah's Books. Happy Halloween. In celebration of the holiday, I thought I would make a short video in which I answer the questions of the Edgar Allan Poe tag, talk about knitting, mention my new book review of a book about witch hunts in 17th century Scotland, and reminisce for a moment about how I celebrated Halloween for the past few decades. Let's get started. The Poe tag was created by Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics and Greg at Another Bibliophile Reads right after their visit to the Poe Museum in Richmond, Virginia. There are just 4 questions in this short tag, and the first one is, what is your very favorite Poe story? Well, my very, very favorite one is the horrific story, The Telltale Heart. It was written in 1843, I think, and the story is about a man who is driven mad by the pale, filmy eye of the old man he lives with. Is the man his father, his employer, his landlord? We don't know. The tension in the story is heightened because the narration is first person, present tense, talking to the reader. The narrator is so overwhelmed by the eye that he plots the murder of the old man, and he very carefully plans out the perfect murder, which will include hiding the dismembered body under the floorboards. But his guilt completely overwhelms him. It's a fabulous and quite short story. I've been reciting The Telltale Heart for years and years, starting at a school Halloween fair when I was in the 7th grade. A recitation I've repeated almost every year since, including for a video for this channel. I'll link to that video down in the description box if you want to add it to your Halloween observances today. And in my opinion, hearing it is even better, even creepier perhaps, than reading it to yourself. I want to mention another favorite Poe story that played a pretty important part in my life, The Purloined Letter. Instead of summarizing the tale, I'm going to steer you to Olive's discussion over at the channel Book Olive, where she talks about a very special version of the story. The reason why Poe's story is so central in my life is that for many years, starting from a few years before Twitter even started, I had a small knitting blog, which I named The Purloined Letter. While the blog was active, I went on a variety of Poe-themed pilgrimages to the Richmond Museum where Alan and Greg went, to his grave in Baltimore, etc. Also, I was given an enormous amount of Poe paraphernalia by my imaginary knitting blog friends. For those of you who don't knit, let me explain. While knitting refers to the whole craft, knitting is actually made of 2 major stitches, the knit stitch and the purl stitch, hence purloined letter. The knitting blog was really the first time I had done anything online other than email, and I did it anonymously, so the title seemed appropriate. If I hadn't chosen to start that little project, I don't think I would ever have considered starting this book channel here years later. The second question is, what is your favorite Poe poem? I'm really fond of To One in Paradise, about the death of a loved one. Unlike the spooky works Poe was often known for, this poem is just heartbreaking. The poem ends, and all my days are trances, and all my nightly dreams are where thy grey eye glances, and where thy footstep gleams, in what ethereal dances, by what eternal streams. The other poem I adore is one I'm sure many of you may be thinking about, The Raven, with the famous recurring stanza end line, quoth the raven nevermore. My favorite version of it, the passive-aggressive raven. Question 3. Do you have a Poe t-shirt? I definitely used to have one back in my knitting blog days, but I think I gave it to my son once he grew into it. And I'm sure he has outgrown it now if he didn't wear it out first. I also had a baseball cap, which I assume stayed in close contact with the t-shirt. But I have a Poe mug, a pet raven, And the last question of the tag, how many Poe books do you currently have on your shelves? Well, right now I have no Poe on my shelves due to a library restructuring project. They're in boxes. But the favorite editions I own are the annotated Poe and this sort of spooky / psychedelic paperback. Well, that's it for the tag, but I do want to mention a couple of other Halloweenish things. First, I just read a review of a new nonfiction study of women accused of witchcraft in 17th century Scotland. Spoiler alert, I didn't love the book, especially because of its weak use of historical evidence. However, if you're interested in how modern feminists connect to the stories of people who were tortured and executed because their neighbors believed they were witches, and how modern women find ways to memorialize these victims of witch hunts, you might be interested in Ashes and Stones, A Journey Through Scotland in Search of Women Hunted as Witches by Alison Shaw. My full discussion of it is on Open Letters Review, and I'll leave a link to it down in the description box. And the last thing is that Halloween is kind of a special day for me. David and I thought of Halloween as our dating anniversary, believe it or not, way back when we realized more or less on Halloween morning that we were falling in love with each other. We each had specific days before that, looking back, felt like dates, even if we didn't realize it at the time. For David, it was a tour I took him on of Philadelphia, where I had lived for about a year before he moved there. And for me, it was a visit to the anatomy lab at midnight to meet the cadaver David was dissecting during his first year of medical school. But it wasn't until Halloween that we knew we were becoming special friends. That night we went to a friend's Halloween party. I was dressed as a witch, as I always do, and he was Paddington Bear, wearing my old duffel coat with a big tag we drew together, which said, "Please look after this bear." We held hands at the party, and our friends laughed. "We've known you were dating for months," they said. Well, we didn't know. So, for years, we celebrated Halloween every year in a special way. We ordered pizza, an opened bottle of champagne, and passed out candy and plastic spiders to neighborhood trick-or-treaters who came to our door. This year, one of my friends is coming over to pass out treats with me. She's bringing a pizza, and another friend is going to join us a little later to share some of the bottle of champagne we're opening. This isn't going to be the easiest evening for me, I don't think, but I know it will bring back a whole lot of wonderful memories. I bet you didn't guess that I would cry at the end of the Halloween tag, did you? I hope you all have a spooky, lovely evening, connecting with all the youngsters in your neighborhood and with each other. Cheers.